The auditorium shimmered with light and applause. Students tossed their caps into the air. Parents cheered, except at the far corner, where a young woman in a wheelchair sat quietly, hands folded on her lap. Her name was Lily, the CEO's daughter, paralyzed after a car accident that changed her life. As the crowd celebrated, one man walked against it, a single dad, holding 2 roses and a trembling smile. When he knelt and offered his hand, the room fell silent. That moment would change both their families forever. Daniel Evans had learned to measure success differently than most people. At 39, he didn't count achievements in promotions or bonuses, but in smaller victories. His son Noah graduating high school, the mortgage paid on time every month, dinners that didn't come from drive-through windows. As a construction foreman, Daniel worked with his hands, building things that would outlast him, and found a quiet dignity in labor that some people mistook for limitation. Noah was 17 now, a good kid who'd grown up too fast after his mother died when he was 8. Sarah had been a nurse, the kind who worked double shifts and still found energy to make Noah's lunches with encouraging notes tucked inside. She died suddenly, an aneurysm that gave no warning, no chance for goodbyes. And Daniel had been raising Noah alone ever since, trying to be both parents while knowing he could never quite fill the space she'd left. This particular June morning was Noah's graduation, and Daniel felt the weight of the milestone. His son crossing into adulthood, ready for college in the fall, becoming the kind of man Sarah would have been proud of. Daniel wore his only suit, slightly too tight in the shoulders from years of physical work, and clutched 2 roses, one for Noah, one to place on Sarah's grave later, so she could know their boy had made it. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, hundreds of families celebrating, cameras flashing, the air thick with pride and possibility. Daniel found his seat in the middle section, watching Noah in his cap and gown, looking impossibly grown up. That's when he noticed her. At the far corner of the auditorium, slightly separated from the crowd, sat a young woman in a wheelchair. She was maybe 18, wearing a graduation gown that pulled awkwardly around the chair's wheels, her hands folded carefully in her lap. While everyone around her celebrated in loud clusters of family and friends, she sat alone, watching the ceremony with an expression that tried for dignity, but couldn't quite hide the loneliness underneath. Daniel recognized her vaguely. Lily Pierce, daughter of Eleanor Pierce, the tech CEO whose company employed half the city. Noah had mentioned her occasionally, always with a kind of reverent distance, the way you'd mention someone from a different universe who happened to occupy the same building. The ceremony proceeded with speeches and awards. When Lily's name was called, the applause felt different, sympathetic rather than celebratory, the kind of polite recognition people gave when they weren't sure what else to offer. She wheeled herself across the stage with practiced efficiency, accepting her diploma with a smile that looked rehearsed, perfected through repetition rather than joy. As she returned to her spot, her diploma slipped from her lap, falling to the floor just out of reach. Daniel watched as she tried to maneuver her chair to retrieve it, her face flushing with embarrassment as people nearby pretended not to notice her struggle. Without thinking too hard about it, Daniel stood and made his way across the row, excusing himself past other parents. He reached Lily just as she was giving up, shoulders slumping in defeat. "Congratulations," he said softly, bending to retrieve the diploma and offering it with both hands, treating it with the respect it deserved. Lily looked up, surprise flickering across her face. She was used to people either staring or aggressively not staring, to being helped in ways that felt like charity rather than kindness. But something in Daniel's quiet gesture felt different. No performance, no self-congratulation, just one human helping another. "Thank you," she said, and for the first time that day she smiled genuinely. Daniel returned to his seat, not thinking much of the moment, just glad he'd helped. Across the auditorium, Noah had watched the entire interaction, recognizing the casual kindness his father carried, like other people carried car keys, always accessible, never requiring thought. The ceremony ended with the traditional cap toss, the auditorium erupting in cheers. Daniel found Noah in the crowd, hugged him tight, and handed him the rose. "Your mother would be so proud," he whispered, and Noah's eyes went bright with unshed tears. As they prepared to leave, Daniel glanced back at the corner where Lily had been sitting. She was still there, alone, checking her phone with increasing anxiety. The parking lot was emptying, families flooding out in loud, happy groups. But no one approached the girl in the wheelchair. Daniel made a decision. "Noah, wait here a second." He walked over to Lily, who looked up with that same guarded expression she'd worn all day. "Are you okay? Is someone coming to pick you up?" "My mother's stuck in traffic. Business meeting ran late." Lily tried to sound casual, but Daniel heard the practiced disappointment underneath. "I'm used to it." Rain started falling then, the sudden kind that turned parking lots into lakes within minutes. Families scattered, running for cars while Lily sat under the auditorium's overhang, watching water pour from gutters. Daniel pulled out his phone. "Do you want me to call someone? Or wait with you until your mother arrives?" "You don't have to do that." "I know, but it's raining, and you shouldn't wait alone." The rain came down harder, turning the graduation celebration into chaos as families ran for their cars. Programs held over heads as makeshift umbrellas. The parking lot emptied quickly, leaving only a few stragglers and one girl in a wheelchair under the school's canopy, watching water cascade off the roof's edge. Daniel pulled a bench closer to where Lily sat, settling into wait. Noah appeared moments later, having retrieved their truck but unwilling to leave without his father. "You okay?" Noah asked Lily, and she nodded, though both of them knew it was a polite lie. "Your speech was really good," Noah continued, awkward but sincere. "The part about resilience meaning more than success, that was my favorite." Lily looked at him properly for the first time, recognizing him from school, but surprised by the compliment. At school, people either avoided her or were aggressively nice in ways that felt performative. Noah's awkwardness was refreshing, genuine uncertainty rather than practiced sympathy. "Thank you," she said. "I wasn't sure anyone was actually listening." "I was. It made me think about my mom. She used to say similar things about how the hard parts teach us more than the easy ones." Noah glanced at his father, then back at Lily. "She was a nurse. She died when I was 8. The admission hung in the rain-heavy air. Daniel watched his son, proud of his willingness to be vulnerable, to share grief as a point of connection rather than something to hide. "I'm sorry," Lily said quietly. "That must have been really hard." "It was. Still is sometimes. But Dad always says we honor her by living well, not by staying sad." Noah smiled slightly. "Though he's allowed to cry when we watch her favorite movies. That's in the rules." "Us," Lily laughed. A real laugh, unforced and genuine. The first time that day, her expression had softened into something unguarded. "You have rules about crying?" "3 rules," Daniel interjected, joining the conversation. 1, you can cry during Pixar movies because they're specifically designed to destroy you. 2, you can cry at graduations because they're supposed to be emotional. 3, you cry when you need to, no shame, no apologies. "Those are good rules," Lily said. They talked while rain drummed overhead, about small things at first, safe topics like graduation and summer plans. But gradually the conversation deepened, the kind of honesty that emerged when strangers found themselves in liminal spaces with no social script to follow. "People stare at me like I'm broken," Lily admitted, her voice going quiet. "At school, they either treat me like I'm made of glass or ignore me completely. Like the wheelchair is all they can see. Not me, just the thing that makes me different." "People look at me like I'll never be more than what I do," Daniel replied. "Like because I work construction, I must not be smart enough for anything else. Like my hands are dirty, so my mind must be too." Lily met his eyes, seeing recognition there. They were invisible in different ways. Her because of what people saw, him because of what people assumed, but both intimately familiar with being reduced to a single characteristic. "How do you deal with it?" she asked. "I remind myself that other people's limitations aren't mine. Just because they can't see beyond one thing doesn't mean I have to accept their narrow view." Daniel smiled slightly. "And I raised a son who judges people by how they treat others, not by what they do for a living or what they look like. That feels like winning." Noah shifted uncomfortably, unused to his father's praise but pleased by it nonetheless. An hour passed. Lily's phone had died, her mother still hadn't arrived, but none of them seemed to mind the delay. The rain had created an unexpected pocket of time where normal social rules didn't apply, where a CEO's daughter and a construction worker's son could just be 3 people waiting out a storm together. Finally, headlights swept across the parking lot, a sleek black sedan that announced money before anyone emerged. Eleanor Pierce stepped out, dressed in a business suit despite it being Saturday, her expression tight with the particular frustration of someone whose carefully managed schedule had collapsed. She hurried toward them, heels clicking on wet pavement. "Lily, I'm so sorry. The meeting ran over. Then traffic was impossible. Then—" She stopped, noticing Daniel and Noah properly for the first time. Her eyes flickered over Daniel's slightly too tight suit, his work-roughened hands making calculations that people with money always made when encountering people without. "Mom, this is Daniel and Noah," Lily said, and something in her voice, warmth perhaps or gratitude, made Eleanor pause. "They kept me company while you were stuck. Daniel even helped me get my diploma when I dropped it during the ceremony." Eleanor's expression shifted through several emotions. Embarrassment at her daughter needing help she hadn't provided, discomfort at the social debt this created, wariness about who these people were and what they might want. But years of business training taught her to smooth over awkward moments with practiced grace. "Thank you so much," she said, extending her hand to Daniel. "I really appreciate you staying with her. I'm Eleanor Pierce. Daniel Evans, this is my son Noah, and it was no trouble. Graduation should be celebrated, not spent alone." He shook her hand briefly, noticing how she assessed him, categorizing and dismissing in the span of seconds. "Well, we should get going. Lily has family dinner tonight." Eleanor moved to Lily's wheelchair, efficiently preparing to leave. "Thanks again," Lily called as her mother wheeled her toward the car. "For everything." Daniel and Noah watched them drive away, the expensive car gliding through puddles that would have splashed any ordinary vehicle. "That was nice," Noah said. "Helping her, I mean. It was the right thing to do." "Do you think we'll see her again?" Daniel shrugged, unlocking their truck. "Probably not. Different worlds, kiddo. But that's okay. We helped when help was needed. That's enough." But Daniel was wrong. They would see Lily again, much sooner than either of them expected. And the simple kindness of one rainy afternoon would ripple outward in ways none of them could anticipate. 3 weeks later, Eleanor Pierce appeared at Daniel's construction site. Daniel was supervising a crew reframing a commercial building when one of his workers tapped his shoulder, gesturing toward a woman in business attire, picking her way carefully across the muddy lot, completely out of place among hard hats and heavy machinery. "Can I help you?" Daniel called, walking over. "Mr. Evans, I'm Eleanor Pierce. We met at graduation." She extended her hand, all business despite the construction site chaos around them. "I wanted to thank you properly for helping Lily that day. It was very kind." "It was nothing, really, just basic decency." "Nevertheless," Eleanor pulled an envelope from her purse, "I'd like to offer compensation for your time. I know you stayed quite a while, and I'm sure you had other obligations." Hunin, Daniel stared at the envelope, understanding immediately what it represented. Eleanor's way of clearing a social debt, of returning their interaction to familiar territory where everything could be transacted and quantified. "I don't take payment for being human," he said quietly, not touching the envelope. Eleanor blinked, clearly not used to refusal. "I assure you it's not charity, it's just gratitude." "Then say thank you. That's all the gratitude I need." Daniel met her eyes directly, without deference but without challenge either. "Your daughter needed help. I helped. That's the whole story. There's no transaction to complete." Eleanor stood there for a moment, envelope still extended, slowly realizing that this man genuinely didn't want her money. It was so outside her experience. Everyone wanted something, everyone had an angle, that she didn't quite know how to process it. "Well," she said finally, returning the envelope to her purse. "Thank you then, sincerely." Daniel nodded and returned to work, and Eleanor drove away, troubled in ways she couldn't quite name. But the interaction didn't end there. 2 days later, Lily appeared at Daniel's garage, the small space behind his house where he and Noah restored classic cars as a hobby. She wheeled herself up the driveway, carrying a bag of expensive snacks, and wearing the kind of determined expression that suggested she'd overcome significant obstacles to get there. "Hi," she said when Daniel emerged, surprised. "I hope this isn't weird. I got your address from the graduation directory. I wanted to see where you lived, how real people actually live." Daniel wasn't sure whether to be amused or concerned by the phrasing. Real people. You know what I mean. People who don't have house staff and corporate lawyers and every moment scheduled 3 months in advance. Sure, she looked around the modest property, the small house that needed paint, the garage cluttered with tools and car parts, the normal chaos of actual living. This feels real. Noah appeared from inside the garage, wiping grease from his hands. Lily, what are you doing here? Visiting. Is that okay? Yeah, of course. Want to see the Mustang we're restoring? Over the next hour, Lily transformed from the isolated girl at graduation to someone younger, happier, more herself. She asked questions about the car, laughed at Noah's terrible mechanical puns, and seemed genuinely interested in their work. Daniel watched from his workbench, torn between pleasure at seeing her relaxed and worry about the complications this friendship might create. The worry proved justified. A week later, Eleanor stormed into the garage just as twilight was settling, her car screeching to a stop in the driveway. She emerged furious, clutching her phone, and Daniel knew immediately that something had shifted. Do you have any idea what you've done? She demanded, striding toward him. Daniel set down his tools carefully. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Paparazzi photos, social media, headlines about tech CEO's disabled daughter slumming with construction workers. She shoved her phone toward him, showing tabloid articles with photos of Lily at their garage, laughing with Noah. My board is asking questions. Investors are concerned about my judgment. Do you understand what this looks like? It looks like your daughter making friends. It looks like opportunists taking advantage of a vulnerable girl for their 15 minutes of fame. The accusation hung in the air, ugly and cutting. Daniel felt anger rising, but kept his voice steady. We didn't contact any media. We didn't ask for attention. Your daughter came here because she wanted to, and we treated her like a normal person. If that's a problem for you, that's your issue, not ours. Before Eleanor could respond, Lily's voice cut through the tension. Mom, stop! She wheeled herself between them, her face flushed with anger. They didn't do anything wrong. I came here because I wanted to be somewhere. People treated me like I'm more than just your daughter or just the girl in the wheelchair. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Lily, I'm trying to protect you. From what? From people who are actually kind? From the first real friendship I've had since the accident? Lily's voice rose. Yes, Mom. It looks like someone finally treated me like a person. If that embarrasses you, I don't know what to tell you. Eleanor's expression shifted through shock, hurt, and something that might have been shame. I'm forbidding you from coming here again. For your own safety. Safety from what? From people who care? But Lily knew arguing was futile. Her mother had made a decision, and Eleanor Pierce didn't reverse decisions. That night, after Eleanor had driven Lily away in tense silence, Daniel sat on his porch watching stars emerge. He heard footsteps and found Lily wheeling up his driveway, tears streaming down her face. I snuck out. My mother thinks I'm asleep. She wiped at tears angrily. I hate this. I hate that I have everything. Money, education, opportunities, but none of it feels real. All of it's managed and controlled and carefully orchestrated. I just want something authentic. Daniel sat on his porch steps, eye level with Lily's chair. Then maybe you need something that isn't for sale. What does that even mean? It means the best things in life, real friendship, genuine connection, people who see you instead of what you represent. Those can't be bought or controlled or managed. They just are. And your mother's trying to protect you from them because she doesn't understand how to value things she can't control. They sat together in the darkness, listening to crickets in distant traffic, and the silence said everything words couldn't. Eventually, Lily's phone buzzed, her mother discovering her absence. I should go before she calls the police. Be safe, Daniel said. And Lily, you're always welcome here. Your mother can't forbid kindness. Lily smiled through her tears and wheeled away, back toward her controlled, managed, carefully orchestrated life, carrying with her the memory of one place where she could just be herself. 3 months passed. Eleanor Pierce's company faced a crisis, a merger that collapsed publicly, wiping billions from the stock value and exposing vulnerabilities in her leadership. The media that had scrutinized Lily's friendship with construction workers now tore into Eleanor's business decisions with gleeful brutality. Lily, frustrated and depressed after being cut off from the garage, insisted on transferring to an intensive rehabilitation center across town. The official reason was better therapy equipment. The real reason was escape from her mother's suffocating control and guilt-driven overprotection. The Riverside Rehabilitation Center was newer, more modern than where Lily had done physical therapy before. Here, patients worked toward real independence rather than just maintenance. Here, Lily could push herself without her mother hovering, anxious and limiting. Daniel learned about the transfer through Noah, who'd been exchanging occasional texts with Lily despite Eleanor's prohibition. "She's at Riverside now," Noah said one evening. "Says she's trying to walk again. Actual walking, not just exercises." Daniel knew Riverside. He'd worked on the construction crew that built it 2 years ago. "That's good. Real independence will help her more than her mother's protection ever could. Can we visit her?" Daniel thought about Eleanor's fury, the paparazzi photos, the accusations of taking advantage. Then he thought about Lily sitting alone at graduation, about her tears on his porch, about the simple fact that everyone deserved friends who showed up. "Yeah," he decided, "we can visit." They brought coffee the next Saturday, good coffee from the local roaster, not hospital vending machine disappointment. Lily was in the physical therapy room, working with parallel bars, her face tight with concentration as she tried to move her legs in ways they'd forgotten how to respond. "Hey," Noah called softly, not wanting to startle her. Lily looked up, her expression transforming from concentration to joy. "You came. I didn't think, after everything with my mom." "Your mom doesn't get to decide who your friends are," Daniel said simply. "How's the therapy going?" "Hard, really hard, but I'm making progress." "Watch." Lily gripped the parallel bars and pulled herself to standing, her legs trembling but supporting her weight. She took one step, then another, then a third before her physical therapist moved in to support her. "That's amazing," Noah breathed. "That's more than I could do last week. I'm getting stronger." Lily sat back in her wheelchair, breathing hard but smiling. "It's weird. Everything with my mom falling apart has been the best thing for me. She's too distracted with her company crisis to micromanage my life. I finally get to make my own decisions." They visited regularly after that. Saturdays became their routine. Noah brought coffee and terrible jokes. Daniel fixed things around the facility that needed attention. A broken wheelchair ramp that had been scheduled for repair for months, a door that stuck, railings that had worked loose. He did it for free, understanding that budgets were tight even at nice rehabilitation centers. The staff noticed. Patients noticed. Slowly, Daniel became a familiar presence, the quiet man who showed up to help without being asked, who treated everyone with the same patient dignity, regardless of their condition or prognosis. One afternoon, Daniel was adjusting the height of some parallel bars when he heard heels clicking on tile. He turned to find Eleanor Pierce standing in the doorway, watching him work. "Mrs. Pierce, Mr. Evans." She approached slowly, looking around at the facility, at her daughter laughing with Noah across the room, at the patients working hard toward recovery, at the atmosphere of hope rather than maintenance. "I came unannounced. Wanted to see how Lily was doing when she didn't know I was coming." "She's doing well, getting stronger every week. Because of you." Eleanor's voice was quiet, almost sad. "She tells me about your visits, about how Noah brings her coffee and makes her laugh, about how you fix the ramp she uses every day, about how this place feels like progress instead of just management. We're just her friends. You're more than that." Eleanor watched Lily attempt the parallel bars again, her face showing determination rather than frustration. "Do you see how she pushes herself? How she tries things I never thought she'd try again? That's not just physical therapy. That's hope. And you gave her that, you and your son, by treating her like someone capable rather than someone fragile." Daniel didn't know what to say, so he just waited. "I'm sorry," Eleanor continued, "for the accusations, for trying to pay you off, for assuming you wanted something from us. I was wrong." She took a breath. "My whole life has been about control. Controlling my company, my schedule, my daughter's safety, and I thought I was protecting her, but I was really just limiting her." "She's strong," Daniel said. Stronger than you give her credit for. I see that now. The company crisis forced me to let go, and without my hovering, she's flourished. Eleanor smiled slightly painfully. You did for her what all my money and worry couldn't. You gave her a reason to try again. Across the room, Lily had spotted her mother. Instead of the tension that usually defined their interactions, Lily waved, genuinely happy. Eleanor waved back, and something in her expression softened. 6 months later, Riverside Rehabilitation Center hosted a graduation of its own, a ceremony for patients who'd achieved significant recovery milestones. Unlike the high school graduation where Lily had sat alone, this ceremony felt intimate, meaningful, celebrating victories that were harder won and more precious for it. Lily stood at the small stage, actually stood using forearm crutches but bearing her own weight, taking steps that 6 months ago had seemed impossible. Daniel and Noah sat in the front row, applauding louder than anyone, their pride uncomplicated and genuine. Eleanor sat beside them, having insisted Daniel and Noah sit with her in the family section. You're as much her family as I am, she'd said, and meant it. Lily's speech was short, delivered with the same thoughtfulness that had marked her high school graduation address, but this time rooted in lived experience rather than abstract philosophy. 6 months ago, I couldn't stand, she said, her voice steady. Not because my body couldn't, but because I'd stopped believing it was worth trying. I'd let the wheelchair become my identity, let it define what I could and couldn't do. And then someone showed me that the only real limitation was the one I'd accepted. She looked directly at Daniel and Noah. Someone taught me that kindness doesn't require a reason, that friendship doesn't require permission, and that the people who see us most clearly are often the ones we least expect. They taught me to stand up again, not just physically, but in every way that matters. After the ceremony, they gathered outside in the late afternoon sun. Lily stood between Daniel and Noah, still using her crutches, still requiring support, but standing. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of them. How does it feel? Noah asked. Terrifying, Lily admitted. Also amazing, mostly both at the same time. Eleanor watched her daughter, seeing strength she'd almost prevented by being overprotective. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Mom, for letting go enough that I could do this. Thank Daniel and Noah. They showed me what I couldn't see, that protecting you meant trusting you, not controlling you. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, unused to such direct gratitude. We just showed up. You did the hard work. Lily extended her hand, the same hand Daniel had helped her retrieve her diploma from the floor months ago, but steadier now, stronger. Thank you for reaching out when no one else did, for seeing me instead of just the wheelchair, for teaching me that I was worth the effort. Daniel took her hand carefully. You were always worth the effort. We just helped you remember. The sun set slowly, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. They stood together, a single dad and his son, a CEO learning humility, and a girl who'd learned to stand again, connected by the simple truth that sometimes the smallest gesture could lift a soul that thought it would never stand. Months later, when Noah started college, Lily was there, walking with arm braces but walking, cheering louder than anyone. When Eleanor's company stabilized and she launched a new initiative funding rehabilitation centers, Daniel's construction company got the contract, chosen not for the lowest bid, but for the quality of their work and their understanding of what these spaces meant. And every Saturday they still gathered, sometimes at the garage where Lily had first learned to laugh again, sometimes at Eleanor's house where she'd learned to let people in, sometimes just for coffee where strangers had become family through the simple act of showing up. The pressed rose from graduation still lived in Lily's journal, next to a note she'd added, for the hand that reached out when no one else did, and taught me to reach back. Sometimes the smallest gesture, a hand offered without expectation, a moment of kindness in a rain-soaked parking lot, the choice to show up when you didn't have to, can lift a soul that thought it would never stand again. And sometimes in reaching down to help someone else up, we discover we've been lifted too.